Kent E. Nielsen here, and I'm delighted to have you with me. Christ came into the world to do the will of his Father, and he prepared a way for you to do likewise. Join me to put him first in your life, receive the fruits of godliness, and realize your divine mission to be like him. You were born and commanded to do greater works than he did. Now let's go to work.
Hello and welcome to Jesus is the Mark. We're grateful to have you here. Again, I say we because I'm with a former neighbor and friend, Mr. Allan Johnson. And we're grateful for your time, Allan. And to start off, before I say start off, this is take two. We did a podcast a few days ago, and Allan we talked the next morning. He's like, I want to do it again. And I'm going to be better prepared now that I know what's going on. So thank you for your willingness to meet with me again. And to start off, go ahead, tell us a little bit more about you, Allan. Who are you, and what brought you to where you are?
Who am I? Allan Johnson. I turned 71, which is very hard for me to believe. It just seems like I was 25 yesterday. But my testimony began when I was 15. And I worked at a Boy Scout camp, and there was a returned missionary that worked there, and he took an interest in me, and he challenged me to read the Book of Mormon. And so I started reading it, and I just absolutely loved reading it while working at the Scout camp. Every night I would read it. Every time I got a break, I would read it. And I read it in about a week and a half, and I finished it, and I loved it. I just absolutely loved it.
Wow.
And we would get together and talk about it, and I'd ask questions, and he said, do you want to learn some more about it? And I said, I do. And he said, then read it again. So I did. So I was 15, and that summer I read through it twice. And I had such a strong feeling that I was reading what actually had happened on this continent. That's where my testimony began. And it's only gotten stronger through the years, a lot stronger than that. So that's how it began. I did go on a mission. It was kind of a strange mission. I was called to Kentucky and Tennessee, and I got an allergy shot because I was having some allergies, and the nurse misread the dosage and gave me 0.10 cc's when it was supposed to be 0.01, which is 10 times. And it put me into what's called anaphylactic shock, and my heart sat and vibrated. Ventricular fibrillation, it just vibrated. They rushed me to the hospital, and they gave me a shot. I still remember, big, huge, long needle went right into the heart and got it pounding again, which was very painful. And then they finally released me to go home, to go back to my apartment. And then I served for about maybe 2 months, and my heart stayed beating at 140 all the time.
Oh.
And they gave me more allergy tests, and finally the doctor said, he cannot stay here. He's highly allergic because of that dose problem. He's highly allergic to everything we have. So they said he needs to go someplace else. So the mission president called up and talked to the head of the missionary committee, who happened to be a little old man named Spencer W. Kimball. And President Kimball said, send him home. And I said, you tell President Kimball, I don't want to go home. I saved up for this mission. I've planned this mission my whole life. I want to complete my mission. So he called him up and told him that. President Kimball said, I'll call you right back. He called my stake president to find out if I was worth keeping on a mission. He said, yes. So he said, send him to Arizona. That's where we send all of our sick missionaries, I guess. And I went to Arizona for about 6 months. My heart still kept beating very fast, very rapid. You can't sleep. Anyway, they did some more testing and said, he can't stay here. He's allergic to everything in the desert. So the mission president called President Kimball, who happened to be the president of the Quorum of the 12 at the time, and said, he's the one that we got, and he's still sick. And he said, send him home. And he said, he won't go home. He is begging not to be sent home. So then President Kimball called my bishop and said, what kind of kid is he? And he said, he's the real deal. He set the example. And so he said, well, send him up to Canada. Nothing grows up there. So I went up to Canada, and my mission president met me, and he said, have you ever had a blessing for this? And in all the time, I hadn't. Just hadn't dawned on me. I'd given a lot, but I hadn't. And he said, let's fix this right now. So he gave me a blessing right then and said, you will be healed, and you won't have any more of allergy problems. And that's what happened. And I never had any more problems the rest of my mission. And anyway, my testimony has just been growing stronger and stronger since then. I was married at 25, have 3 wonderful daughters. My wife of 37 years passed away of breast cancer, and I was heartbroken, of course. And all I wanted to do was just join her. I would pretty much didn't want to go on. It's very hard. I understand someone who's lost their love. And one night I woke up in the middle of the night, and I kept hearing the words, find Pam, 3 times, find Pam. I didn't know who Pam was, but that happened 3 times during the night. Find Pam, find Pam. And the next morning I got up and I was cleaning out a file, and I found a little teeny 1-inch stickum note, fell to the floor, and on it was the name Pam with the telephone number. And I remember getting that about 5 years prior to that. My mother's best friend, who was Pam's, that I grew up with, uncle or aunt, had given me that note. And then I knew which Pam it was, but I didn't know where she was. I hadn't seen her for 42 years. And I finally found her on Facebook, and she was not married. She'd been kind of deserted to be a single mother to raise the children. And I called her up, wanted to know if she just wanted to talk about the fun time, because we'd just grown up in high school, and she's in pep club, I'm in pep band. We did everything together. Never dated. She had a boyfriend, I had a girlfriend. But we got together, and it was like those 42 years disappeared, and our friendship just was right there, solid as could be. And I thought, why not? So we got married, and we're doing great. Right after we got married, her son passed away, which was very difficult. And then she got breast cancer, and I thought, I don't know if I can deal with this, but she got through it. So anyway, life tosses you lots of difficult fastballs, and I've learned to juggle them, I guess you'd say. But with each difficulty I have in my life, my testimony goes stronger and stronger. So that's me. That's who you're talking to.
How is it possible for a testimony to go stronger amidst trials?
So the night that my wife passed away, I was there taking care of her at home. The girls had all come over and basically said their goodbyes, and lots of tears and crying. And I sent them home. And then I was just up laying next to her, and she was unconscious, and I knew it was any time now. And finally, at 5:30 in the morning, she, before she passed away, about 2 in the morning, I just started talking to her. And she was unconscious. She didn't answer me. But I'd look at her, and every time I'd look down at her, I'd start to cry. And all of a sudden I heard, stop crying. I'm not down there. Look up, look up. And I looked up. I didn't see her, but I'd start talking again. And every time I'd look down, I'd start to cry, and she'd say, up, up, up. And I'd look up. And so that became my little mantra, up, 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 look up. But she talked and I talked, and I cried, and she kept saying, stop crying. We'll be together again. Stop crying. I couldn't. Anyway, so through all that, I come away and I'm like, well, I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And my testimony of being together again and being sealed just grows stronger and stronger after an experience like that.
Thank you. What does it mean for a testimony to grow stronger and stronger?
Well, I can't think of anything that would come between me and my testimony of Jesus Christ. Nothing. I've been through some pretty tough times, I took care of my father for 3 years, took care of my mother for 2 years, took care of my wife for 3 years. I've had some really difficult times, but I have never doubted the Savior, and I have felt comforted many times when I needed extra comfort. And there were a lot of times I remember going to my brother's house and asking for a blessing because I was struggling so much. And every time I would just come away knowing, well, I kept thinking, trust me, trust me. So, and I used to fight against Heavenly Father and Jesus and said, it's not right. You can't take her. That's not right. I don't see why you have to take her. She's too young. And I just would kind of really argue. And then one time it just came to me as, I'm not going to win this argument. I'm not in charge here. This is the Lord's will, and he's doing his thing. And it's his tapestry that he's embroidering and making. And so I finally just decided I'll trust him and accept it. And when I said that in my mind, I trust you. And it was like a burden was taken off my shoulders. And I have trusted him ever since and believed nothing could shake my testimony. Nothing.
Thank you. So, so these may be primary questions, but I sincerely would like to know what is a testimony to you then? What does that mean?
Well, there's a word called belief and a word called know. I know the church is true. I believe the church is true. How do you know something if you've never seen it? It's just more of a feeling. So I don't know if I can say, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt the church is true. But I feel that way. I believe that. I believe with my entire heart and everything that Joseph Smith was a prophet, that the church is true. I have a quick story to tell you, that the church is the true church of Jesus Christ. And it's solid. It's solid. It's unshakable. But here's my little story. While on my mission, I was driving the mission president around to different conferences, and I saw a book in some people's houses that we stayed in called Book of Mormon, Key to Conversion. And I read it during the night that we were staying there. And the next morning, I picked up the mission president and I said, President, I read a book last night. It's fascinating. I can answer any question you can ask me about the church. I mean, I have a good answer for anything, any objection you have, I can answer it. And he said, oh, well, we'll talk about it later on. And I said, okay. So during the conference, it's like a state conference, a district conference, but it's big. There were 1,000 people. He said, to give you an idea of the quality of the missionaries we have here, I'd like to invite Elder Johnson up here, and I'd like you to ask him anything you would like to ask him. I was not prepared for that. And I'm standing up at the podium, and he goes, yes, sir. And he pointed, and somebody said something about the priesthood and about Joseph Smith and about polygamy. And I answered every one of their questions according to the way this book taught. And anyway, so I believe it. I believe it very strongly.
Cool. That reminds me. I'll share a bit of my story. I turned my life over to the Lord at 18 and have been faithful to my covenants and done everything that I could within my power to be an active member of the church. About 3 years ago, I associated with some people that were seeking to meet Christ personally and to know him, as you referenced just a minute ago. And I started having some insecurities and some doubts about leadership, because they suggested that if the brethren haven't had a first vision experience, then they shouldn't be leading. And I found through that experience, and I changed through that experience. Like my testimony of Christ didn't change in any way, shape, or form through that experience. But the thing that I discovered is that we have been commanded to seek his face, and such as Doctrine and Covenants, section 93, verse 1. But that doesn't mean we have to have that experience before we can be a prophet, seer, and revelator, so to speak. I don't know if they've had it or not, and frankly I don't care. But I know that they're seeking it, just like we're commanded to seek it in section 93, verse 1. And so the coming full circle to what you said, I choose to believe in the brethren now. I choose to sustain them. And since I've made that decision, since I have just made that choice, that selection, my life has returned to order again. Whereas it was chaotic 3 years ago. For instance, I was hospitalized. That was actually 2 years ago. I was hospitalized and my life was a mess. And so the point I want to emphasize is it's a matter of choice. And you I think you said I believe it. You choose to believe it, and because of that, you choose to act on that belief, which is faith. And when we act on faith in Christ, we're choosing to be like him, choosing to discover his attributes, his perfections, and his character, and implement those things into our lives, into our character. Doesn't mean we take on his personality per se, but we strive to be like him, and to grow and develop our talents, and then to share them.
Wow, nice. Very nice. So I was thinking, my parents were both inactive my whole life. And yet all the kids grew up active in church. All the boys went on missions. My sister went on a mission later. All of us were married in the temple. We're all still married to the same wife, no divorces. And people would ask the stake president, what do the Johnsons do? So he called my parents in, who were scared to death, to think, what does this man want? Because they're inactive. And he just said, I have a lot of people that would like to know, what do you do that your kids are so active in the church? So often my mother said, I think they're rebelling. The stake president said, well, I can't tell everybody to go inactive so their kids can rebel by going active, but if that works. Yeah, my dad was inactive
Yeah.
His whole life. And when it came time for me to go on a mission about 6 months before I left, I said, we had a little conversation, and I said, I would like you to ordain me to be an elder. He wasn't an elder. And he said, I don't think I can do that. And I said, you can. And I said, just talk to the bishop and he'll tell you how. And so he did. And he talked to the bishop. The bishop told him what he needed to do. He got active, paid tithing, quit drinking coffee, did all the right stuff, got ordained an elder, and then turned around and ordained me an elder. And then the next day, we all as a family went through the temple, Idaho Falls Temple, and were sealed as a family. And then a couple of days after that, I left on my mission.
Awesome. What a blessing.
Yeah. And my dad ordained me an elder. And by the time I became a high priest, he had passed away. So I called my oldest brother and asked if he would drive over from Colorado and ordain me a high priest.
Yeah.
He did. And the words that he spoke, I could just feel that's exactly what my dad would have said. Just felt
Wow.
like my dad was giving me that blessing. And anyway, great experiences.
Thank you for sharing that. Why do you choose to believe?
Like I say, I can't be pushed away from that. It's just part of who I am. It is such an important part that it always has since I was 15 years old. I've had a testimony, and I'm not going to give that up. I'm not going to try anything else. I'm not going to test it to see if maybe whatever. I know what I believe, and I believe it very strongly, and I keep pushing forward. I think of how when we're born, from then until we die, really everything that we do is to prepare to return to our heavenly family, and to be worthy to return. And so every decision I make is about staying worthy to return to Heavenly Father. And if it doesn't seem to fit into that, the decision's made. We don't do that. So I don't know. I can't answer your question of why do I keep doing. I just know that's who I am. That's part of me.
So does the fruits of believing, do the fruits of a believing, I guess what I'm getting at is, when you believe and you act on that belief and you direct your life on that belief, it becomes a knowledge. Because we learn in the scriptures that by their fruits you shall know them. And when you choose to believe and you partake of those fruits, it builds on that belief and takes you to the next level. So it's just, as I've done that in my personal life, I turned my life over to the Lord after I heard President Benson's speech, a recording of what he had said, that the Lord can make more out of your life than you could. Man, I sure could use some help in that area. I was working at McDonald's, and I had no idea about a future. I had no idea that I could go on a mission. I had no idea that I could get married in the temple. I had none of that. But I said, I'm going to choose to believe that the Lord can make more of my life. And then, like, you've read my book, but I talk about this in my book. And the guy that recorded the audio version of it, he ad-libbed and added something, which was quite funny, I thought. So I had the thought to my mind, because I was a Star Wars fan. Thought came to my mind almost in a Yoda-like voice. What the question was, let him. And that's what I'm like, let him, I will. Was my response into the Spirit. And I did it. And as I look back, like you have expressed, and you see the hand of the Lord in your whole life, what do you think? Has he made more of your life than you could have on your own?
Well, I don't know where I would be without the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's who I am. I try to practice that. That's my kindness, my love, my service, my offerings. It's everything. Just who I have a man 3 doors down from me that I'm got assigned to be his ministering elder. So the first thing I did was I made a bunch of cookies, and I walked down, knocked on the door. He wasn't home. Went back the next day, not home. Went back the third day, not home. Went home and ate the cookies. Had to make a whole other batch. I've been to his house 5 times, hasn't been home. I'm about to eat the second batch of cookies. But I'll keep at it. And I'll find him, because that's what I'm supposed to do.
Cool. Well, Allan, I appreciate you taking the time to share your testimony, and it's beautiful. I really appreciate you as a friend, as a neighbor, and as an example of a disciple of Christ. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share?
Yes. Well, this just came to me. I worked with someone for several years who was probably the least likely person in my mind to be a member of this church.
Mm-hmm.
Out of everybody else, it would be the last one I would have thought. And then I find out that he is not only a member, but he's in a leadership position in the church. And I remember how sad I thought and I felt for him, because I thought, wouldn't that be sad if I lived a life and nobody knew what my standards were, what my belief was, um, I was just so sad thinking about that, because that's his situation. He lives a whole different life. So when I was an air traffic controller for my career. And when I get a new team, I sat them down and I said, something you need to know about me. I do not like hearing the F word. I said, if you think you're impressing me, you're not. I don't like it. It just tells me you don't have a very good vocabulary, because you have to use that word to express yourself. So don't try and impress me, because it won't. And after everybody left, one of the controllers came up and said, I've been taking that word home, and my wife is begging me to stop, and I'm having the hardest time stopping it. So he said, your little talk today has motivated me to stop. So he said, could we make a deal? If you ever hear me say the F word at work, I will give you a quarter. And I said, I can't do that. I'm your boss. I can't do that. And he said, no, this is not employee boss. This is friend to friend. He said, I'm just asking for some help. And I said, well, I will on one condition. What's that? That is, if you ever hear me say the F word, I'll pay you $100. And he's like, you're serious? I go, never said it before. Don't think I'm going to say it now. Anyway, so we had this agreement that he would pay me a quarter. And one day he walks in, reaches in his pocket, and pulls out a whole handful of quarters and slams them on the desk. And I said, what's this for? And it was a snowing, blizzarding, terrible day. And he goes, it's going to be a bad day. I can already tell. And so he's paying me in advance. I go, it doesn't work that way. You don't get you can't buy that word.
Yeah. How did
Anyway,
he take that?
What?
How did he take that you can't buy this word?
Oh, we just laughed about it. He
Mhm.
thought I thought you'd get a kick out of me giving you all this money in advance. But
How did the day turn out for him?
it was a busy day, a very hard day. When the weather is really crappy, that's difficult for air traffic controllers, because they have to, the airplanes are in the clouds, they can't see anything, and the
Yeah.
controller has to be extra vigilant. It's one of those careers where it's like no tolerance for mistakes. You can't say right when you meant left, because you can kill people that way. You can't mix up your numbers. 352 instead of 253. You just can't mix. You just can't make mistakes in that field. And so it was kind of a tricky career, and lots of pressure. But I loved it. I loved every day of it. I miss it. I wish I could go back sometimes and do it some more. But they don't like 70-year-olds controlling traffic. Probably wise now.
When you told your story of this friend of yours or acquaintance of yours who had changed his life and become a leader, I was reminded of this is my final thoughts, by the way. I was reminded of the parable of, I don't even remember the name of the parable, where there's a master and he goes out and hires all these people to work for the day for a certain amount of money. And then midday, he hires another group of people to come help in his vineyard for the same amount. And then the last hour of the day, he hires more people and pays them the same amount that the first group. And I was reminded of that because I'm sure that that's happened, if not for you many times, it's happened for others. And I think there's just a couple of points from that. Is a lot of people, one is it's awesome when someone changes their life. It's awesome whether they're 20, 40, 60, 70, whatever, when they make that change to be a disciple of Christ, they have the same atonement work in their lives as someone who had that experience at 20. And someone who's 20 is like, oh, how can he have all that I've had? I've been laboring this whole time. And that reminds me of this parable of the prodigal son. I've been working this whole time, Dad. How come he's getting the fatted cow? And I think the key is that that person who made that change in their later part of life, they went through a lot of struggle for those 40 years or whatever it was. Those people that in the market, going back to that parable, that had been working all day, they have families to feed. They've been trying all day to find employment, and finally someone's going to give them employment, even though it's the last hour of the day. But because of that employment, they're going to be able to feed their family. And it's rejoicing to see someone come unto Christ and to make those changes. And no matter how old they are. And I guess the invitation is, let's receive people, and no matter what stage they're in, and give them the opportunity to partake of the joy that we have as faithful members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah, and if you're going to be jealous about someone else who got something that you don't think they deserve, you're just kind of showing your spiritual progress. It's like you're not there yet.
Yeah, we all have things to learn. And on that note, that's one thing that's really helped me in life, is that I can't hold other people accountable for what I know. And I hope they don't do the same for me, because we're all on a different journey. We're all on a different level. Because the Lord teaches us line upon line, precept upon precept, according to our obedience. And it just helps me to realize, cut some people more slack. They don't know what I know in some cases. And in other cases, I'm like, oh, I got to change. I got to be more like him. I don't know what he knows. and it encouraged me, like, okay, I can still do this. I can still become better.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is probably way off the subject, but can you look behind and see that target back there on the wall?
Yes. Uh-huh.
So one day
it's a bullseye for those that can't see. It's a bullseye with I'll just make my observations here. It's black with white targets, and it's all over the board. At least you're on the black, but you got some close ones and some far ones. Is it bullets or is it arrows? What is it?
It's bullets.
Okay. Looks more like a disc now that you bring it closer.
Yeah, it's a target.
Okay.
And anyway, I went to a shooting range and I rented a gun. They rented me a gun. I bought a box of bullets. I don't know how far that target was. It was a Glock pistol. Okay. And I shot it. And I brought the target home and I showed Pam. Yeah. And she counted, and there's 25 holes on that. And she said, "Look how good you are. You hit, look at that. Look how good that is. You hit 25 times."
Yeah.
I had a hard time telling her there were 50 shells in the box. I only hit the target half the time. Anyway, I guess if you wanted to make an analogy about,
yes, please,
about hitting the mark, maybe
there you go. I love it.
Yeah, would be well, practice makes better than 50%, but I had never shot before a pistol like that, and I shot it and I hit 25, and I was pretty proud of myself for hitting 25. Turns out there were 50. I mean, there were 50, but I was thinking how new members, it's a whole change for them. I mean, if you were an expert shooter, that would be nothing, but I'm not. And so that was something. And I think of new people that are accepting the gospel or that are struggling with their testimony, supporting them and cheering them on, like Pam did for me. It's like, "You are awesome." I think she's right.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I love it.
Anyway, that would be my closing thought for you.
Thank you. Because we should be rejoicing where we are and the fact that we can grow and learn more. It's been a delight visiting with you, Allan. Thank you so much for sharing who you are and all that, and having an edifying, unscripted conversation. All right.
Well, now you know who I am.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing it. Have a beautiful night.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for a brief mental workout. Wise men do their mightiest works with their mental exertions. I encourage you to take time to ponder on the weightier matters of life and to govern your body with pure mental exertions, rather than having your body tell you what to do. You are welcome to connect with me further at my link in bio, where you can access my book, my social handles, my latest creative updates, and even request coaching services via email. I have been given much and am here to serve. Thank you, and God bless you to be fruitful in doing your mightiest works. Good day.